This is the Unit 1 Study Guide answer key for ELR 1.5. For the first question, we've got a question about observations. We're supposed to make a list of qualitative and quantitative for the figure on the left. For the qualitative, we're going to go with anything that's true, that isn't amounts. So I'm just going to say a list. So things like he's wearing a purple shirt, or excuse me, pink shirt, purple pants. He has his mouth closed. He has gray shoes. He is, if you were to measure him on the paper, he's a few inches tall. Actually, the few inches tall wouldn't work. He has the number 55 on his shirt, so I want to point that one out. The number 55, if you were to point that out, that's not quantitative. That's just a fact about his shirt. For quantitative, that's anything true that is an amount. So he has 2 legs, 2 shoes, there's 1 ball, he has, looks like 3 fingers on his hand, he's got 2 antennae, he's got 2 eyes, anything that's an amount. Next section is 1.5b, we're going to talk about trends and relationships. For number 1, it says sketch a graph that could show an insignificant relationship between the IVs. So insignificant means that there is a change going on, but it's very tiny, so the graph might be creeping up like that. Or if you have a bar graph, the bars on your graph are all pretty dang close to the same as each other. Maybe there's a slight difference, but they're all pretty close. Number 2 is saying sketch a graph that shows an inconclusive relationship between the IV and the DV. So inconclusive would be where you have not enough trials. So if I were to put trials on the bottom, and I have like 2 different trials, that would definitely be inconclusive. For number 3, what is the trend of this graph? So on this graph, it looks like we're doing hours versus number of students for amount of television watched. So I'm noticing an increasing trend, and then it decreases again. So this looks like a variable graph. Or you could even like look at just certain segments of the graph, like between these 2 spots, you could say between 0 and 11 hours, it's increasing, but after that it's decreasing. Those would both be trends as well. For number 4, what's the trend on this graph? We're looking at amount of salt added and temperature, and it's pretty well increasing the whole time. It slows down a little in the middle, but we have an increasing graph. So you would say as the amount of salt increases, so does the temperature. For number 5, the student who collects the data from question 4 did just 4 trials in order to collect their data in order to address the following hypothesis. The amount of salt affects temperature. Does this data support the hypothesis? If you're tempted to say, well, yeah, the amount of salt changed, so the temperature went up. So it's supported. You can't say supported if you can't trust your data. And it looks like since they only did 4 trials, that's going to be the important part, the 4 trials part. 4 trials means that you can't trust it. That's inconclusive. And you can't trust it. Number 6. Stephen was trying to figure out if temperature had an effect on hair growth. What are some possible pieces of quantitative and qualitative data that he might collect? So let's start on quantitative. I'm looking at amount of hair, so like numbers of hair. We could do length of hair. Basically anything that could be counted. If we're talking about control variables, it might be like amount of sleep. It could be measured in hours. We might have like the age of the person as a variable or a controlled variable. That's something that's definitely quantitative. How much water they drink, anything that could be measured with numbers. Over on the qualitative side, we could talk, again, just anything that could be measured in this kind of experiment without numbers. So we could be like the mood, maybe that affects things. We could even do like ethnicity, maybe different ethnicities matter for the participants. Gender, it's only 2 choices, but it's still qualitative. Anything that could be measured or looked at qualitatively will work. So things that would not be involving numbers.